last we left Nazrin, there was a moment where she was trending towards like an 8-figure business, doing 40 grand a day on a new product drop that was absolutely taking off. AJF Growth was servicing the business. It was going great. And then it stopped going great. And we haven't told the next part of the story for a little while, but for whatever reason, we could not figure out why we went from $40,000 days to much lower days. And that 8-figure dream collapsed. It did not happen in that time. And I am going to pick up the story today with Nazrin Jafari from Mixed by Nazrin. You've heard Nazrin on this podcast multiple times before, a great friend in the space and a really, really awesome business because the story is crazy after this. There are downs, there are ups, there are lows, there are highs. And we're going to talk about a Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale that had a 350% improvement year over year, much more profit. New product release is going great. She's wearing one, actually, on this episode right now. I can see it. She's usually wearing some Nazrin clothes. Mixed by Nazrin, fashion brand in Brooklyn, formerly AJF Growth client, still kind of, sort of, very small way, AJF Growth client, and great friend in the space. This is a really cool story from an operator who is smashing right now, but has not always been, and who has very bright future as well. Let's go into it with Nazrin Jafari from Mixed by Nazrin. Hello, Nazrin.
Hey, Andrew.
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
I am so excited about this. We have, obviously been DMing here and there along the way. I've been sort of aware of what's happening in your business, but after you fired us, which we all thought was a good idea, actually, it was like, yeah, it's probably not going to work, or at least downgraded services dramatically. We did that because we all made the sort of joint assessment, which was that like financially it didn't make sense for you to keep working with us, but also what we provide was not really what Mixed by Nazrin needed at the time of the business. And so I want to actually start us by going back a couple of years to what I sort of brought up in the intro, which you just heard me record, which is this moment where we were hitting something like 40 grand a day. And I remember just being so confident. I was just like, this is an 8-figure business. It just is. We just are there now. But then something happened, which is that just like for no discernible reason, like there was no super high frequency on ads. There was no financial disaster that happened somewhere or whatever. It just faded out. We just slowly saw less and less profitable ad spend happening. And it just kind of went backwards. I don't know if you remember the exact moment that I'm talking about. Maybe you remember it very, very well. Because the story I want to tell here, to tell people where we're going, is to talk from there to the decline that happened after. And then critically, what you did to right the ship. Because, let's just spoil the ending here. You've got 100% year over year growth. You're like 3x as profitable as a percentage. So that means growing top line with a bunch more percentage bottom line. Like everything about the business is drastically better than it was not that long ago. And so you fixed it. You solved it. And it's a really, really strong business right now that I think anybody would be really happy to have. So let's go backwards to what we were looking at then. And maybe you can describe that moment a little bit, Nazrin, and then what your assessment of what happened was. And that maybe will lead us to what fixed it. So long question, but there you go.
Sure. So it was the beginning of 2024 when we really started a fully on-ramp together. I know we started a little bit late in 2023, and that was the first time in January where we got the explainer to really hit for us. And that was a new format of ads that we discovered really worked well for the brand. And the first one we did was that Ruby jumpsuit explainer in January of 2024. I think we did maybe 200,000 in sales that week. And then we just took that format and applied it to our bestsellers, our denim jumpsuit, our Secret Garden jumpsuit, items that we actually had already had in the assortment, but we just added this format to, and that completely just unlocked the account from January to, I would say, about April. And then in April, things fell off of the cliff. And moving forward that year, there wasn't any other product drop or product winner that made itself clear. And I think some of that has to do with seasonality in the ad account. Every year I've noticed that spring, like that Feb to April period, is a really high buying time. I think people are refreshing their closets. People are more in market for what we're selling. And so we've always every year sold more in that early spring period. Summer tends to be a little bit slower, and a lot of that depends on what product you have available. Fall as well. So when we were working together, I think we only had one drop in the fall. There was no pre-fall collection. There was no knits collection. And fall and winter is really geared towards like warmer weather clothing, whether that's outerwear or knits. And we didn't have any of that in the assortment. So it was just really hard to get the Meta account to kind of come back to life in the way that it did in early spring. Even with the explainers on different products, it just didn't quite hit as well.
Yeah, those explainer videos really worked. And it's interesting because in some ways you would sort of think a fashion business like you have is exactly the wrong kind of business for an explainer format to work. But these would be like 2-3 minute videos where you, the founder, are going through and showing every detail of the product, And I still think part of the reason those worked so well was what your hero product was and kind of is, although you've diversified some, which is that jumpsuit, right? So maybe you can just take a second and talk about why you think that format worked for your customer. Do you have any theories about that?
Yeah, I mean, a couple. One is that what you kind of touched on is that we sell jumpsuits, and jumpsuits have a lot of fit issues with people. People are a little bit hesitant to buy them because they have to fit just right. And so talking through what the fit looks like for the jumpsuit, that the fabric is stretchy, that, just to basically to answer all the questions that a potential customer might have, I think was really helpful. Another thing is that our customer, from the data I am able to gather at this point, seems to be a little bit in an older age range. And I think that customer wants to see like that full explainer video. But I'm also curious about other formats that speak more towards a younger audience or a 20s and 30s audience, because I do think that format is more so geared towards an older audience.
Yeah, it's funny. Alex Greifeld has said this about, I always feel like I'm getting her name wrong if it's Greifeld or Greifeld. Alex has said, including conversation with you, that like sort of that format does work particularly well for an older audience, and that like there is a real like sort of age ad format fit with those kinds of things. So, it's super interesting. But I think your broader point is the more interesting thing here, which is sort of like product and seasonality with this huge layer. And this is something I've really come to believe a lot of times. When you see ad accounts, and I've seen a bunch of these now, where the same ads have a huge lift and do really, really well, and then just kind of steadily fade out over time. When you see those moments, that almost always there's a seasonality thing going on, especially if you don't see like a really, really high frequency.
Yeah.
So like it's possible that you just have like tapped into a very small audience and that you've saturated them quickly, but that's pretty hard to do. There's a lot of people on Facebook and Instagram. Most products like this like fit a lot of people. So a lot of times what that is instead is like the seasonal buying moment. Like essentially the demand side of the equation changes extremely fast and it's extremely powerful. And I think that was the thing that we had kicked around. And I remember we were debating this a bunch at the time of like, what in the world, like why is this happening? And this was like one of the theories, but it's also, whenever you're in that moment, it's very hard to prove. It always feels like, well, if we just I don't know, it worked really well when we got the right ad. So yeah, but I've seen this in other businesses too, where it really is seasonality and like massive demand side changes that have an overwhelming impact on the ad account and really change what CAC is possible on a given product. So, okay, so if that is your theory, kind of went through 2024, what happened after that as you sort of reassessed both sort of that moment and other moments in the business to think about, okay, how is Mixed by Nazem going to take it another step forward? What did you do? Because you had incredible success this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's about more product, and better pacing of that product. So when I moved into this year, it was about, how do I think about my assortment on a more holistic basis? What do we already have for the customer? What are the gaps? And then how can we fill them? What are things that worked really well in the past? Was it denim? Was it solid? Was it a certain type of print? And how do we take some of those, qualities and characteristics and apply them to new product moving forward so that we have a better chance to find another one of those winning products? And then I think part of it was having, we're building this kind of like library of evergreen best-selling products that also balances out some of the volatility in the brand. So I think time just in business is helpful, which we've talked about as well. And yeah, I mean, eventually we found new winning products. So we had our Rachel denim dress. It took off in the spring. And that's been our best-selling product this year. The Aki Maxi was our second bestseller this year, but that was from fall of 24. So that's an example of how, just having that core evergreen bestseller just continues to carry the business moving forward. And then the first, game changer this year was our first $1 million month. So we had our anniversary sale. We do it every year. It's our birthday sale in July. And the year prior, we'd done about like 400,000, let's say. And we ended up doing $1 million. And 70% of that was on pre-order. So I think there was a lot of demand that was missed. I think had we been in stock, we could have done a lot better. And I think part of that had to do with just the spend that we were doing in the spring and how much, more top of funnel, more awareness that we got on the brand, that then come July, people were ready to purchase. I think for us, the birthday sale tends to be our biggest moment because it's easier for us to spend on Meta during the time when the auction's just not as saturated. Yeah. And also a couple things. So less saturation in the meta auction. 2, we get most of our eyeballs on the brand in the spring, because that is, like we talked about, a tailwind in the industry. People are doing outfit refresh, wardrobe refresh. They're looking for new stuff. And also people want to wear a lot of color in the spring and summer. And I think most people think about mixed and think about bold color, which is just more relevant to that season. So that was really the big moment that changed the trajectory of the business. Up until then, we were just maybe like 20% year over year. But that $1 million month helped me unlock something I didn't realize how much demand was kind of just there for the business. And after the birthday sale, we'd come out with another 5 collections, which we'd not done that volume in the past. We did a pre-fall collection, a fall collection, a knits collection, a holiday collection. Sorry, 4, not 5. Whereas in the past, after the birthday sale, all we had was 1 fall collection. So, and I saw how that even just that pre-fall collection, it was only 5 pieces, but all of those pieces hit. And some of those ended up becoming the best sellers of the second half of the year. So this, again, like that shot,
so interesting.
Those shots on goals, when you get it right, you have, one, when you're coming out with more products, you have more shots. And then when more of those shots hit, it just carries the business.
If you are listening to this episode with Nazrin, what you're hearing is an operator who is growing in competence and excellence across every part of her business. And that is the kind of operator that INTELLIGEMS was built to serve and they love to serve. INTELLIGEMS is not just CRO software. INTELLIGEMS is split testing software that goes way beyond the basics so that you can bring financial excellence and also excellence in just sort of serving your customer as well as possible to every part of your customer's experience with their store, and then measure and track the performance of your changes on your store down all the way to the level of profit. So just quickly, what INTELLIGEMS does, right, is it allows you to do A/B testing, but it goes way beyond basics. Like I said, it allows you to test things like price, free shipping thresholds, shipping charges, your first customer offer, and of course, all the other basic stuff that you do, headlines, design changes, etc. You can actually do full Shopify theme tests. And now they've recently introduced the ability to bring testing actually to your checkout flow as well on Shopify. So it's a really robust tool, very fast and easy to install. You don't need a developer. And so you can get started and get testing right away. And wonderfully, what you are able to do with that is measure all of the performance of every one of those tests. Again, not just at the level of conversion rate or AOV or even both, but actually at the level of profit, because INTELLIGEMS ties into your COGS data on your store so that when you go and change the discount amount or change the price or whatever, you can see the trade-off between volume and margin per customer represented in an actual profit number as you look at the results of your tests. Go check out INTELLIGEMS today if you're a growing store and you're trying to make that website experience better for your customers, provide more value to them, measure back how it provides value back to your store, and really generate more profit for every visitor that comes to your store. Go to INTELLIGEMS, intelligems.io, get 20% off your first 3 months when you use the code FARIS20, FARIS20, to get 20% off, like I said, your first 3 months. Intelligems.io, link is in the show notes. Go check it out today. One of the reasons I was really eager to talk to you and have this episode is that it fits it fits my narrative, and I want to keep selling this point to people, which is that, like, when we answer the question of like why you had that first moment where you're having those $40,000 days, whatever, right? It's like, okay, well, we had a mix of product that worked at the right seasonal moment in the early spring, but also like we had an ad that helped unlock that and a format that helped unlock that. And I never want to discount that too much. But what you should also hear in that is that ad probably helped us capitalize on a moment, and our media buying, I think, probably helped us capitalize on a moment better than we would have otherwise. Mm-hmm. But also, it was totally insufficient for creating like the real long tail of growth. When everything else you just said in your answer was product, seasonality. You mentioned 2 dresses that were top sellers. Previously, it was always jumpsuits that were top sellers, but maybe there's a TAM unlock with dresses. Yep. And then you also mentioned 2 major promotional moments, which is really interesting. So like, hitting promotional moments right. Those being really big levers for generating a whole bunch more value. Yep. Awareness of how the promotional moment fits the seasonality, which is another, which is like basically combining those 2 things. And then also like number of products. Yes. And you put all that together and you now end up with like the real pathway forward. And I'll pat myself on the back a little bit here, which is that like at some point that was sort of my conclusion in the business as well. And part of why I thought like we can't actually help you anymore is like this becomes a challenge of how much product can you release that hits, especially in fashion, where it's like it's going to be, there are going to be times of year where people are, I mean, there's the really obvious example here is there's going to be times of year people are not going to buy a sweater. They're not going to buy a sweater in July. They're just not. Okay. So that means seasonality is built into the product in in a unique way in fashion, I think.
Yeah.
This is probably true of a lot of businesses in every way, but some businesses, there's like larger inflections on this sort of thing. And this is one of them. So now you get 4 product releases instead of 1 during that second half of the year. You get product releases that are hitting more, and then you align your marketing moments to that. And the net result of that is 100% year over year growth, massively bigger BFCM, massively bigger birthday sale, and a whole bunch more profit all happening at the same time. And also just like a much more sustainable business. And it's such a good thing, I think, for people to hear, because especially for people who listen to somebody like me who talks about things like meta ads tactics and stuff like that, just the temptation is always to go back to like, we just got to find that right ad, or we got to auto bid, or because or your manual bids are choking out the spend in the wrong way, or whatever it is. It's like, no, it's not the way that you're really going to grow your business. That stuff is all in volleyball. Those are all the things that are the sets, and the set matters, or the bump matters, right? But the spike is the product and is the moments and all those things.
Yeah. But the product also, it's harder and it takes longer to create. So I think I understand why people go to like the button that they could click today and then get the result from the experience later that day. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's the unsexy work of actually building the bones of a business, which product and cadence.
You just called it unsexy, but do you think that's true? Like, which part of the business do you like more? Is it more fun when you're working on product all the time, or is it more fun when you're working on changing the ad account all the time? It's a leading question, but I'm actually curious what you think.
I mean, I don't see my business in just those 2 like dimensions, but
sure.
I mean, obviously working on product is fun, but I think that it's the feedback loop that's different, right? The product, you can be working on that 3 to 6 months until you can test it. Whereas Meta, you can test it today. And I think that's a nice
that is fun
for us.
Yeah.
But I think, just another example of what you were saying, right product, right time. This fall we had we launched our fall collection, and then, come October, it was just dying out. It was getting slow. And then we launched knits, and right away, right that week, just like 3-4x revenue, because it was just people wanted knits in the fall. They didn't want like short sleeves or, so
wow, it was that just big of an impact that fast, huh?
Yes, that big, that fast. Dropped it. And then on a Sunday, and then on starting Monday, spend just like completely increases all in a bid cap, cost cap structure. And then that week just crushed. And then similarly, like it got a little softer and a little softer. And I wasn't like, oh my gosh, what's breaking out? What's happening? Is like, okay, this is how it works. And this just means next year I need another collection that drops 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, whatever it is. And we did that this year, and it did well.
Okay, so you did all of those things. You also mentioned something else to me quickly, which is that your returns have gotten better, because you're talking about net revenue numbers where you doubled the revenue this year, et cetera, and saw lower amounts of returns. Did you do something to accomplish that? Because this is a big problem for a lot of apparel businesses, and was a very big problem in your business in particular, which is that like the return rate was so high that it just like kind of crushed your gross margin. Was there a tactic there or something?
I mean, we did more dresses, and dresses have been selling. They're some of our top sellers, and I think dresses are just easier to fit than jumpsuits. Other than that, I mean, we've always tried to use fabrics that have more stretch, or denim has stretch, so that we can decrease that rate of return. But yeah, other than that, that's, I would say, probably just the category expansion and having that be a bestseller.
That's a big deal, though. I mean, again, another thing I remember talking about is like, if we could sell something like dresses instead of jumpsuits, like jumpsuits are sort of a brutal product to sell D2C because they're really hard to fit. There's a really high return rate. Like
I've noticed a lot of a lot of brands don't do jumpsuits, and I bet that's a good reason why.
Yeah,
but I think
exactly right. Probably helps you in one respect, right? Because if you're willing to sort of suffer through it, then great. Let's talk more about the product development process. You mentioned like sort of this idea of thinking about the product in terms of what parts of your collection, like sort of what you're not selling that people want. Is I forget how you phrased it exactly, but can you talk about how you think about adding in something like knits? You're wearing this sweater right now. Is that one of the knits that you? Yeah. Yes, awesome. With chili peppers on it, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
You added knits, you added maxi dresses, you added stuff like that. Like, how have you thought about sort of not just like design, but sort of product category? And I'd actually love to hear any details you have on sort of like if there's any research or anything like that that's part of that process, like, and maybe not, like maybe you're just obviously like, I don't know, people want dresses, but yeah, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so on a couple different levels. So One, if we're just talking like blanket seasonality, I think what's obvious is in the fall, people want something warmer. So that's knits and outerwear. Outerwear is a little bit harder to develop, so I went with knits. And then another way that I like to slice it is thinking about our existing customer. What have we already offered her? And then what gaps do we need to fill? So we have a ton of short sleeve jumpsuits. Why don't we just lengthen the sleeve on that jumpsuit for the fall winter? That seems to make sense, and it's like easier in terms of product development lift. Now that's
Did that work?
Yeah, it did work. It did work. Not in
Yeah,
like
that's
not in a
cool.
huge way, but it worked.
Yeah,
And then I also
yeah,
like, what is another gap in our assortment? Well, we don't have that many solids. And then also when it comes to fall, textures. People like texture. People like, again, we talked about warmth, coziness. Let's try corduroy. We did solid corduroy crushed. Every solid corduroy just crushed, and it's so easy. It's a solid color. I don't have to design the print. Like, I'm like, let's keep it going.
that's awesome.
So that did really well. And then I also think about it in terms of like, I think about like, what's the new product for the existing customer, but then what's the new product for the new customers that we plan to acquire on Meta? And some of that has to do with like the margin profile of that product. What's the MSRP of that product, and how well is that going to perform on Meta? And then visually, how well is that going to perform on Meta? And then thinking about like, if we're doing a mini dress, for example, that's probably not going to be for our existing customer, because our existing customer, it's an older woman. She's not like an 18-year-old girl. So if we're going to do a mini dress, then we need to be ready to acquire that customer. And like, do we have like the media and the brand, to do that? So I think about it on a couple different levels. And yeah, I mean, in terms of like research, I have like a post-purchase, what do you want to see next from us? But I think there's customer, behavior, and then what they say they want. So.
Yeah. You just heard Nazrin talk about how important it will be in her business to have lower COGS. And you may not have the ability or even the knowledge, whether it's time or knowledge or both, to go figure out how to do that in your business. I know people who can help you do exactly that, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff with your supply chain. And that's my friends at Move Supply Chain. Move Supply Chain built my own e-commerce brand supply chain from the ground up. They've helped a bunch of other founders do the same thing, especially founders in that sort of 7-figure range who are in the place where Nazrin is at, growing business, trying to find ways to bring more efficiency to their supply chain. That's all kinds of things. That's COGS, that's payment terms, that's MOQs, that's better new product development, all the things that will make your business work more efficiently. Move Supply Chain has deep expertise and can help. I recently had Laura Guevara, the CEO of Move Supply Chain, on the show, had her on a bunch of times. She was just in China. She visited 28 factories her last trip in China. And the thing is, it was easy for her to do that because she lives in the Philippines. And so it's a quick trip to China. She's able to get there on behalf of businesses. And also, because she represents multiple businesses, she actually brings more sway when she shows up in China, because she can represent a whole bunch of businesses at once, so that your smaller 7-figure business can actually have a little more cachet with vendors, because Laura is able to go, or one of her teammates is able to go on behalf of your business, meet with vendors, and help negotiate with a whole bunch of other business represented at the same time. So she can bring a little more cachet to those conversations than your very small business, because supply chain is a volume game. So there's all kinds of ways in which your supply chain can get better. And the beauty of Move Supply Chain is they will help you do that with a whole bunch of expertise. And because they're built in the Philippines, they're also affordable. You should check it out. You just get on a call with them and see if they can help you with your supply chain. They usually can, especially if you're in that phase of business. Before I ever signed up with a packaging manufacturer in China for my brand, they had reached out to, or at least researched 60 different vendors and reached out to 45 of them. Like, there's just no way I could have done that on my own to go find a supplier who ended up being a great fit for our business. Go to movesupplychain.com, get a conversation started today. Make this next year the year that you hammer away at bringing efficiency to your supply chain with Move Supply Chain. What I'm partly curious about is sort of where this is all headed in the future. So based on what you learned this year, before we go there too much on the product level, what about at the level of creative? I mean, you mentioned earlier the notion that like the long form explainer maybe works great, but only is going to reach a certain age level or something a little bit more. What have you done at the level of ad creative, and has that been important? And if so, how?
Yeah, huge unlock on the ad side. So last year, I think when we were working together, I was really the only person in the ads. I was like filming it myself on a tripod. And I think I resonated with a certain segment of audience, and then not beyond that. So now we have like a really nice creative flywheel that happens almost without me every week, where we do ad content shoots with different models, creators, friends, customers, just different people who can come across well on camera. And we go to different apartments and we shoot these explainers. We shoot just things as simple as just like the girl standing back in the product and she's kind of like doing this and she's kind of showing the zipper and she's showing this like the product features but not actually speaking to camera. We do several different types of formats. So, you know, we have content captures and then we have our talent. They shoot for a couple hours. Each week we upload about 40 to 50 new ads to the account. And what's important is that we have a fresh face, so a different model, wearing some whatever garment we assign for that shoot. And then also the backdrop actually quite, we think like matters some in terms of like, what is the setting? Is that setting getting refreshed with all the ads that we're putting out? Is it, you know, aspirational to the brand? Does it make sense with the garment? Almost thinking about it in terms of like a merchandiser when you're thinking about like all the people, the talent, the product, and then the setting, the location. So yeah, having all of those different, I am sometimes at the top of the ad account. And when I say that, I mean, we always store our ad account by spend. What spends the most is what we consider doing those ads doing well in the account. So, you know, sometimes I'm at the top, but oftentimes, you know, now I'm not, which is amazing. It's, you know, huge.
For that creative flywheel, can we talk about a little bit about how you built it?
Yeah.
So let's just kind of talk about each person of it. So how did you find models for that? Who are you using for it?
I think about this so often because a lot of people ask me, owners ask me like, how do you find these people and what's the process? And I realized so much of the people around the brand has to do with the brand itself, not only liking it and wanting to be a part of it, but we do have like an in-person presence. We do have our events. We are actually friends with these people. They want to be friends with us. They want to support us. And so a lot of them are either customers who have come through the studio, people who have come to our events or shows, models who have like modeled for us and wanted to work. Like one of my employees she was a model for the brand because these models are often like creatives that are doing a bunch of other things, freelancing here and there. And so they're happy to be in those content shoots. Some of them are literally just customers who walk through the door in our showroom, our office studio space. So, and then some of it's like their friends. Having a brand where you like never see a customer in person, I can imagine it being hard to find people who are willing to like wear the clothes and do the ad and speak to camera in a convincing, like authentic way. But I think that comes across probably in the ads because they're real people who actually wear the clothes.
I think this is one of the sneaky powers of Mixed by Nazran, actually, is your in-person events and the way people love the brand like this. I've been to one of them, one of those situations where I actually really enjoyed how much of a fish out of water I was being at like a fashion event in Brooklyn. Like anybody who's watched this podcast knows that I wear a t-shirt and a hat every day, all the time. And I asked you what to wear. And afterwards I realized like, well, it doesn't really matter. Like that's what I'm going to wear. I'm going to wear jeans, a t-shirt and a hat. And it was like a funny thing. But anyway, but it was really awesome. It was really awesome to see. I loved it. It's just not a community I get to engage in much, so I really enjoyed it. But how many people are at those events usually?
Like about 200, and that's
what I thought.
All we can fit in the studio.
Right? Yeah. A couple hundred at your studio. I think I have another little theory that more brands need to do some kind of in-person events, particularly if they have some kind of enthusiast element, like a fashion brand does. Yeah. And it's hard to justify because like I watch how much work you put into those. Those are a lot of work. A lot of time, they cost money. Like they are not probably very profitable, if at all, on those moments. But what you just said about your ability to work with models and have people excited about it, I think people really underestimate the power of going deep with highly enthusiastic people, even if it's a small number of people, totally. For the downstream benefits of that. And so I really love that. What about how you have thought about who's shooting it and how much money you're putting into these? Can you give any sense? Like, do you have a certain budget for how you're thinking about how to generate this creative? Like, are you thinking about it as a percentage of spend or a budget per drop or anything like that?
Yeah. So at first I was like, I just need to start this flywheel. Like if we're spending X amount on Meta, we're spending literally nothing on the creative production side of things. Like I think we were spending that money with you. And then the realization was like, hey, like you actually can't create the creative that works for this brand. Right. And so I need to take the money that I was paying you and then put that into this creative flywheel. So that's kind of how I first thought about it, really, is like allocating that budget somewhere else. As a percentage of spend, man, it's very small.
Yeah.
I should calculate that. Probably less than 1%. But what we do is, the content capture, I think what works well for us is, I know some brands like to take the product, ship it to a creator, have the creator like make it, edit it, and send them back the edited creative. I find that is a very long and cumbersome process. It's much more expensive, and oftentimes the assets you get back are just not what you need for ads. So what we do is we take the editing burden off of the talent. We have our content creator go in and shoot them for 2 hours. So it's just 2 hours of their time. We pay them an hourly rate depending on their like level of experience. All the editing is done in-house, and we have an editor in the Philippines, Cam, who is amazing, and she understands all of our formats, all the different types of angles, different hooks, different iterations to make. And we give her all the raw media, and then from a 2-hour shoot she gets about like 40 ads out of that. And so
Incredible.
every ad ends up becoming $5-10, every video. And of course it's iterations I'm including in that.
Yeah.
And so that's been a good way for us to stretch our dollars so far as I've seen.
It makes sense to me. Like you shoot locally, you get people who are enthusiastic about the brand, and then you edit overseas somewhere with somebody who's really talented. As always, I am voice as loud of a voice as there is anywhere. That like, if you're just like, don't sleep on offshore people. If there's this idea that paying less means you're gonna get less talented people, and it's not true. You're gonna like, it's just, there's really good. So I think you're also right that like in your particular business, there is a reality. And I've had other fashion brands come to me and apparel brands come to me, and I've kind of looked at it and said, like, I'm not sure we're the right partner for you, actually, because what we are actually super, super good at is messaging. And so like that explainer kind of content, we could do it all day. But in fact, for some brands, it's really not what they need most, or at least not like that. It's going to be so much more about their production process and getting the right models and creator types. So, and I also really like that distinction you're making about whether or not you want the creator to do the edit versus like where that cost is. The distinction I would make there is, if you are hiring creators who are distinguished by their ability to create great organic content, like algorithmically strong content, you should pay them to do the edit, because that's actually the skill. But if you're actually just hiring models or something where their core talent is that they look good on camera in your clothes and they're the right demographic and all those kinds of things, then you should do the edit. It will be much cheaper, and you'll get better quality work, and you'll learn what works. You know, I think there's a place for both of those approaches, and it's just, you have to know which one you're trying to do. You know, how's it going to get better next year? What are you focusing on next to improve it again? How do you keep the business moving forward?
I think the biggest lever in the business is our COGS, and we are working with a new supplier that's going to bring our COGS down from 30% to about 10 to 15%. I would say 15% on the high end. So we're looking at like a 87+% margin, and that's just going to change the game so much in terms so much. So in terms of, well, one, like cash flow, so it's going to be easier on cash flow. Inventory buy, so we're constantly out of stock, which that we're leaving demand on the table like that. I can more comfortably purchase more inventory now because every unit is less money. I can discount it more deeply. It's just less on my cash flow. And then obviously,
you mean sorry, Nazmin, you mean discount more deeply, specifically if you need to put it on clearance, right?
Yeah, if we wanted to offload it, we could and still have pretty strong margin there. The meta auction, we can spend higher. We can raise the bid if we want to. We can be more aggressive there. And I mean, those are huge levers in the business. Some of that money now I want to take and reinvest actually in some of the product quality, in new fabrication. So not only is this factory is going to improve our cost, but they also have a lot more access to different types of fabrication and different sewing techniques. And so that's actually going to widen our assortment next year, make it more interesting, make it more layered and textured, which I think, again, speaking back to like product development, is really going to help us. And also, if you want to say build brand, some percentage of that money we're saving on COGS, I want to put it into the hang tag, the label, the packaging, small touches that are not going to be that expensive, but I think the perceived value of that on the customer's end will be increased, and the cost to us is not that much. And I think if we can hold that, one thing you're also going to love, price testing. So because we have such a different COGS margin profile, I am curious to see if we bring that price up from $228, which is where that's our AOV now. Let's say we test the jumpsuit at $198, we get below that $200 threshold, or $178. We'll still have a stronger margin than we do today at $228. So, let's test on INTELLIGEMS what's the volume that we can do at $198 at a better margin than we're at today. Or, maybe we want to keep it at $228 and just raise the meta bid. So I think part of that is a little bit of a brand positioning, positioning the market, and then what are the actual results from that INTELLIGEMS test. So I'm really excited about that.
Hey, Nazrin, separate from the episode, you were telling me that you took a course that was the only course you've ever bought and insanely helpful for thinking about retention Can you just tell people what that was? Because it's from a mutual friend of ours, and I think let's shout it out so people can go check it out.
Yes. So the course is Alex Greifeld's Retention Beyond Email. I don't think it's available to purchase anymore. There was only a small window where you could get in, but like you said, the only course I've ever purchased, it's been so helpful for me to think a lot more holistically. I think what Alex is so great at is similar to what we've been talking on in the podcast. It's not just these like quick hit tactics. It's really like deep business structural changes that you need to implement in order to improve that retention. And just she helped me think about, you know, my email list in terms of like active and lapsed customers, and then breaking that active list down into like curious customers and loyal customers, and like thinking about how do you move people from active to loyal? How do you get that second purchase faster? And that's like, you know, some of that is aided with an email, right? And maybe an offer, but some of that offer probably needs to be a product that somebody wants to buy on the second purchase, right? And so that's on my end, that's a little bit more of a business structural. That's going to take a little bit more time, maybe 3-6 months to figure out what's that second purchase that they're going to make. Is it an accessory that goes with the jumpsuit that they bought, like a belt, or
Nice.
is it like a matching something, or is it like a lower, you know, I don't know what it is, but I think there's just so many. The course has been fantastic.
Yes.
I haven't finished it. But yeah, just a shout out to Alex.
Okay, that's great. Neither of us are paid for that, but you started talking about it, and I just thought Alex is so awesome and provides so much value to the community that we should just like make a point of putting that in the middle of this episode somewhere. So somewhere we will drop this little exchange into the episode, and check the show notes for where to go. You can definitely follow Alex on X at hey, it's Alex P. I believe,
and then get
that
on
is
my
still
newsletter. If I don't think the course is available, but or maybe it is, but if not, you should definitely get onto her newsletter. She has one like that's generally for e-commerce businesses, and then one more specific one that's called PTC Fashion Decoded, specifically for fashion brands.
And nobestpractices.co is her site. She's been at that for a while. She's got a newsletter there. So I'll put all that in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, you're not watching, like whether it's the YouTube description or a podcast feed, all the links for that will be in the show notes. Go check that out. Big fan of Alex. So thanks, Nazarene. I think that will be a cool little nugget for her. That's awesome.
A little Easter egg.
I mean, I love everything about this story. It's funny because you fired us and are doing everything I think you should be doing, actually, including firing us at the time. Again, I was like, team fire us. You are talking about like generating a whole bunch of a wide variety of creative and putting it in your ad account and having a nonstop high volume creative with some focus on quality at the same time. Like there's thoughtfulness to it into the ad account. You're developing more products faster. You are hammering away at your COGS so your margin gets better. You're thinking about how do you do testing that is profit focused at the same time, thinking about moment and seasonality carefully. There's a lot there. It's hard to run a good e-commerce business, but when you do all these things really well, you can build a really, really good business that is, you know, growing materially and has a very bright future, I think, because of all that. So it's just really exciting to me. I love hearing it, and I love getting to sort of watch from my position in Slack to what's happening at a given time in the business. It's really, really cool. Like, I just think you're killing it. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Do you feel like you're better at it now? Because I feel like I hear you speaking with a lot of confidence about a lot of these things and clarity about a lot of these things in a way that reflects a new, not only competence, but a sense of your own competence.
Yeah, 100%. I think it would be interesting if you were to look back at all of our podcasts from the beginning when I was in a different space, like a literal different space, to now. I think this is probably, the most confident I'm speaking. And I just time in the game, you learn so much more about your business and what kind of business you're in. And also, I think from a product development perspective, I have a lot more confidence. I mean, you know, you're talking about someone who was a middle school teacher who like went from like, how do you even make a piece of clothing, or kind of sketching things on a thing, talking back and forth with someone, to now I'm like, okay, like kind of know the process. Still a lot of room to grow there.
Yeah. Makes sense. How many products do you plan to release next year? Do you know yet? Let me ask, not products. How many collections?
10.
What did you do this year?
We did 7 this year, but so much of that was actually backloaded on the second half of the year. Now, like we talked about, spring is just that kickoff moment. So we have something planned for Jan, for Feb, for March, for April, for May, and we're going to capture, this is what I'm thinking. We're going to capture that big spring moment. We're going to get even more eyeballs, more top of funnel awareness in the brand. So that next birthday sale, hopefully we can, maybe that's 2 million. If we're in stock, July. if we're
July. Yeah.
in stock. And also July tends to be a really slow time for fashion and for like a lot of brands for
Huh.
whatever reason. And I think that actually helps us in the auction in Meta. So, you know, kind of, and there's a nice story, I think, around like the sale. It's our birthday, our anniversary. And then, you know, I think also an interesting thing in a way I wasn't necessarily thinking about the business as much in the early days was like just existing customers, and thinking about the split between new and returning, and how much, if you have a good product and people are coming back to buy it, just time in business helps, because that
For sure.
existing customer rate, it just, the existing customer revenue, it just helps, you know, even out that volatility.
Everybody underestimates this, actually. Just that like time creates returning customer revenue. And if you don't bloat your OpEx along the way and you keep your ad spend as a percentage of your new customer revenue relatively constant, or even improve your COGS or something like that, like you're doing, you can actually still maintain really good bottom line margins and actually grow against a fixed OpEx.
Yeah.
Your OpEx will grow some, but it doesn't have to grow proportionally with your revenue. And people just kind of, they just don't think about how the sort of math of this works, where like you generate more returning customer revenue over more time because you have more customers. So even as they fade in value, that happens, especially if you are able to keep growing your spend and do the things you're doing with more product releases, etc. And of course, more product releases are also going to generate more returning customer revenues, more reasons for people to buy from you who've been in the past. So you'll actually improve the value of each customer you acquired. So exactly what you said is right, which is the time is the kind of the key factor there. I also think something else you said there is pretty common, which is like you went from 4 product releases a year, 3 or 4 or whatever, to 7 to 10 this coming year. And, you know, I wouldn't be shocked if in the second half of next year, you actually start to stretch out to 12 or something like that if it goes well. You know, like you'll have more resources. It's really hard to go from like 4 to 40 overnight, but you may end up getting to a point where you're like, hey, we want one big one and one small one every month or something like that, you know, and you really, I don't know what the ideal number is in fashion, but you'll find it. And it's just really hard to go there fast. So this is another thing where time is helpful. Every one of those product releases becomes something that you learn from. You figure out how to get better at it. You figure out how many products to release, how much inventory to buy. You're going to find different seasonality moments that you didn't know existed because you didn't release a product in January before or whatever. And now you are. And so like, how does that even go? So all these things kind of pile up on each other. And again, reflects that like just pushing on the ad account. Again, I love tactics. I think people are wasting a ton of money spending their ad accounts stupidly. Like I think that stuff really matters, and I put out a lot of content about it. But at the core of what's driving the business is this sort of excellence of operations all the way through the product, all the way through the customer, etc.
Yeah, and so my next hire is going to be someone on the product side, because right now it's still me, which is just ridiculous. So getting some help there, I think, is going to help, not just like the pacing of that product and getting more. And to your earlier question, the goal is to do 200 styles next year, 200 unique products. I think working with somebody else with industry experience is going to make the product both better and, hopefully better, and then also more frequent and on time.
Yeah. Okay, Nazrin, anything that we left out of this story that you think is relevant to the growth and success you've seen along the way that you would make sure you'd want people to hear?
I think one thing I guess I could say is that, so we went through that period where the business was slow, a lot of cash drain, everything was getting quite tight. And so going into this year, I made it a point to really take enough cash out of the business for myself so that I could have an amount that made me feel like I could take more risk in the business. And I was really, when we were working together, operating from a place of like, I'm not really paying myself much, and any kind of bets and risk I was taking with money in the business felt 10x more risky because I didn't have some cushion for myself. And I told myself this at the beginning of the year, and I put a number on it. Nazrin, when you have this much, that's going to be your cushion, and then you're going to be able to go hard again. And so I've gotten to that place, and I think identifying that specific number has been helpful because, it can be easy just to kind of get comfortable, taking cash out of the business. But yeah, now that I have like a comfortable cushion for myself, I'm really ready to reinvest more aggressively. And I think as an operator, from one to another might be something that's helpful for folks to hear. Your own
such a good answer
in life. Yeah. I think it affects the way that you run the business and the way that you work with your employees, your team, your agencies, etc. And so yeah, that's one thing that's really helped me.
I think that's really wise. I really like that. I actually remember being concerned at the time with how little money you were taking out of it. Like it was like I don't know if this is good. Like, but and I know entrepreneurs, like, they're going to have this kind of mentality sometimes, but I really like that. I think it's a sneaky thing that probably somebody who's not operating a business wouldn't think about in quite the same way, but it's really, really good. All right, Nazrin, thanks so much. If you would like to follow up with Nazrin, the thing to do is to go to her website and buy some clothes. mixedbynazrin.com is the place to do it. Is there anywhere else you want to send people to, Nazrin? Should people follow you on Instagram or anything like that?
They can
If they want to
they
follow
want
your
on
story?
Instagram.
Sure.
I try to share some
Nazrin.
things, but
Yeah. Nazrin Jafari on Instagram is the place to go do that. Thanks so much for taking time. I think you might be the all-time returning champion at this point. You might have the most total episodes.
I'm like scared to watch my first one. I'm like never gonna watch that again.
You should at some point and recognize, like, that's, again, it's like you said, it's a time factor. I'm sure I was saying dumb stuff too. Like, I've learned a lot in that time.
Well, once the next time I come on will be when we pass 10 million. So this year,
great.
I don't know if we said it on the podcast. This year we're at 5 net revenue, and next time I'm on we'll be at 10 plus.
Net revenue means net of returns, not
net of returns.
Profit.
Yeah.
Just
so we did like 6 million plus.
Yeah. Because well, so if you want to know how frustrating your fashion brand return rate is, just listen to what she just said. 6 million, but then you check out the returns.
Over 6 million in gross sales, and then
$1.5 million
or something is off. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. I'm sure we'll talk to you then. I'm looking forward to that $10 million podcast.
That's gonna be exciting.
All right. It's gonna be great. Maybe we'll do that one in person. Maybe I'll fly to New York for that.
Oh my goodness.
That'll be good.
Wow.
That'll be fun. All right. Thanks, Nazrin. I loved that episode. I told Nazrin right when we hung up, like, that was one of my favorite episodes I've done in a long time, because I think it was really practical and tangible and reflects so much growing expertise in how to grow a great D2C business in a pretty hard category. So it's Nazrin's 4th or 5th time on the store. I know her well, but just really, really cool. I hope it was as helpful for you as it was for me. I learned a lot in that episode. You can reach out to me at podcast@ajfgrowth.com if you have any thoughts, questions, or you want to work with me. In fact, if you want to work with me in AJF Growth, the better place to go do that is to go to ajfgrowth.com, fill out my intake form there, tell me a little bit about your business, and we'll see if we're a fit for you. Got all kinds of great episodes still coming up, being registered, including we're going to turn the tables on an episode soon. Somebody's going to interview me a little bit, which will be fun, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. I will see you next time.